And he's joining us now. Morgan Griffith, Congressman, good to have you, sir.
It's good to be with you.
You know, it was interesting. I just had your colleague, Abigail Spanberger, on, who really is a generally level-headed person. And you can see the conundrum that she's in. And even when I said that, she laughed, because they have to be so sensitive to the left-wing activist part of the Democratic caucus right now, which is driving everything, even when it's crazy and it doesn't make any sense, and they're reasonable. So, I mean, that is not an easy spot for her to be in, is it? Or anybody in her situation.
No, it's not, but, she has the vote, and the people gave her the vote on the floor, and she should be exercising that vote not just for the left wing of her party, but also for her people in the 7th District of Virginia. And sometimes that conflict becomes great, but you just have to go with the people you represent. And, in all fairness, when I heard her say that she voted for 16-year-olds to have the vote and didn't vote to eliminate illegal immigrants from voting because she was talking about the federal law, she skirted around California, allowing some cities in California allowing illegal immigrants to vote and illegal aliens to vote in some of their elections by saying, well, it's redundant of the federal law. This was a statement that said they shouldn't be voting at all, and she voted against that. So it's clear that on some cases where she thinks that it may not be a big deal back home, it may not be an election issue, she's going to vote with that far left.
Well, that puts Congressman Spanberger and many other so-called moderate Democrats, of which there are many, in that same situation, in that every vote they do, they don't want to alienate their left-wing base, which is giving them the activists, shipping people in from all over the United States in their campaign, giving them the money. They don't want to alienate them. They certainly don't want to get a primary challenge in a district that should be Republican. But on the other hand, that's not really what they say they believe in. And so it really puts them in a bind. And you can kind of see just in that 20 minutes we had, I think that is just not about Abigail. There's many people in the Democratic Party, I believe, that are with that. Look, Terry McAuliffe is going through the same thing now. McAuliffe doesn't believe half the stuff that's going on in the Democratic Party. You know that, and I know that. But if he's going to run for president and go to Iowa, he's got no choice. And so it's like, where do you go? I'm waiting for some Democrat to run for president, get up there and say, look, all this stuff is nuts. It's crazy. I'm against all of it. I'm just for pipelines and jobs and traditional Democrat values. And they'll probably get 20% of the vote just by saying that. Kind of the Sister Souljah moment. I don't think it's going to happen, though, because that's not where the money is and that's not where the activists are. So let's get to the emergency order, the president vetoing that. We're getting some of the wall built. But you heard the speech yesterday by Secretary Nielsen, DHS Secretary, saying that the border crisis has gone from a crisis to a debacle to worse than you can imagine, and yet we're not doing anything about it. What can we do?
Well, obviously that's the reason the president issued the emergency order and why I supported that, because, in fairness, when you go down to the border, you see that this is not a good situation. This is not a standard situation. There's a flood of illegal immigrants coming across our southern border. Many of them are being brought over by the cartel for human trafficking reasons. It's a tragedy in that regard. And then they're bringing in all kinds of illegal drugs. Methamphetamine in the 9th District is predominantly coming through the Mexican cartels. Fentanyl's coming into the district. We don't have data on how much of that's coming out of Mexico to the 9th District, but we know that a big share of that in the United States is coming out of Mexico. It is a terrible situation, and I tell people all the time the Democrats are right when they say that we need to be focused on the ports of entry as well, but they're wrong when they say we don't need to build a wall and we don't need to take other measures out in the field. We need to do it all because we need more agents. We need more agents on horseback. We need more dogs. We need more equipment. We need roads through areas where right now they're able to come through because there's 25 miles without a road. So when the agents see them with the drone or see them on a camera, they can't get to them. So we've got to do a lot of different things. And the resistance by Democrats to recognize the problem is unfathomable to me. I really do not understand it.
Nothing seems to be really getting done. And you look at some of the facts that we got the other day. This is what Secretary Nielsen said. She said because of the reciprocal law we have with Mexico, that they give people coming over the border a piece of paper. And if they say 5 magic words, they get to come into the United States. 90% of them come in under the asylum review. They get a piece of paper. They can only be detained for 20 days. They get a piece of paper that says, come back on a certain date, months out. Those that come back, 92% are rejected. But 90% don't come back. So they say 5 words, they get released into the interior of the country. And now you've got your governor, our governor in Virginia, vetoing the bill by Senator Black to eliminate Virginia sanctuary cities, even though he said he would not veto that in the 2017 campaign. So now Virginia becomes what, a sanctuary state? And where are the Democrats going with this?
Well, I really don't know, and it's really harmful for the country as a whole. If we cannot have borders, we want to try to help as many people as we can. We want to have legal immigrants come into this country to share the American dream. We need to make that process simpler, but we've got to stop the hemorrhaging on the border where we have lots of folks coming in who are coming in illegally. The cartels control the border more than we do at this point, and they're charging people $6,000 and up to come in. And the way they pay that back is they either pay it back because they become, in essence, sex slaves, or they become drug traffickers for the cartel. That's how they pay that money back.
And Congressman, let's get back to Virginia for a minute. Over the weekend, MS-13 has been said by cops responsible, the MS-13 gang, who got here through illegal means. They stabbed a 16-year-old 100 times. I mean, think about stabbing somebody 100 times. Kind of a gruesome crime, right? 16 years old. Drove his body to Loudoun County, dumped it on the side of the road, poured gasoline on it, and lit it on fire. Basically been eliminated from the legacy news. You got to dig to find it, not front page anywhere. And this is exactly what Ed Gillespie was saying in the 2017 campaign. Governor Northam called him a racist over it, although now he's blackface and hoods pictures or whatever it is. I mean, isn't there a hypocrisy going on here?
Yeah, there certainly is. There certainly is to say that when you call out MS-13, and President Trump has done it too, as well as Ed Gillespie, and then to pay no attention to it when we have a murder in Virginia that is heinous. I read about that, and the young man all he wanted to do was not be involved. It wasn't like he was going to go snitch to the police, and I'm not saying that would be right, of course, but they are killing people in gruesome ways to send a message that if you are asked to be a member of MS-13, or if you've ever been a part of MS-13 in any way, shape, or form, you're never leaving. And if you're asked to be a part of it, you can't say no, or else we're going to kill you, and it's going to be painful. That's what they're saying. These are brutal people, and we seem to be turning a blind eye to the fact that they're here, and most of them are here illegally. Not all of them, but most of them.
What do you think of the bill that was introduced the other day? 2 of your colleagues introducing a bipartisan bill aimed at easing the burden of paying for higher education and incentivizing colleges to help students obtain well-paying jobs. Because one of the criticisms, Congressman, of this debt now is that colleges are awash in cash, as you know, many of them just doing very, very well. They have all this cash, and they're putting up new football stadiums or whatever. And the students have the debt, but the colleges get the money whether the students pay it or not, because it's guaranteed by the federal government. So I want to go to college, I take out $100,000 loan. I don't pay it back. The money still went to the college, backed by the federal government. Now I default, and I owe the federal government $100,000, and that goes into default status. But the college got the money. Is there something wrong with that process, do you think?
Well, there's certainly reforms that are needed. I have not read the specific bill that you mentioned, but the goals sound fine. You know, we want to have a well-rounded society, but people need to be aware if they're borrowing money to get an education, what are the jobs that are available? If you're independently wealthy and you don't need a job, or if you have a plan that's alternate. I was a history major. Not a lot of jobs as a history major. And so I had an alternate plan, and that was to become an attorney. A lot of history majors become teachers. A noble profession. My mother and aunt and uncle were all teachers, and that's great. But you need to have a plan instead of just going to college to say you went to college. How are you going to pay that debt back? And is there a job when I finish in the degree that I'm acquiring at this university for a large sum of money?
I think people are saying there should be some accountability for the university. I mean, this is almost like I was involved in debate of the trade schools a while back, and that's gone. When Reagan was president, he had stopped this, where independent trade schools were getting all this grant money from the Pell Grants and from GSL student loans, and then students would drop out. They wouldn't get a degree, but the money was guaranteed, and the independent schools would get the money, and there was no accountability to the student. All right, let's go over one other thing. Your colleague Mark Green yesterday, I thought this was interesting, from Tennessee. Green announcing that he's going to introduce a constitutional amendment this week to limit the number of Supreme Court justices to 9. Many of us, when I saw this, I didn't realize. I thought that was just part of the Constitution, but it isn't. Congress sets the number of the number of people on the Supreme Court. Obviously, now the debate, many Democrats calling to expand it, just like FDR tried to do. I think it was in 1935, and it got shot down, trying to pack the court, if you will. Is that an amendment? Can that go anywhere? And where are we going with this debate about packing the court?
Well, I think it's a debate we ought to have, but, the Founding Fathers left it up to Congress to set the number. You have to understand part of that concept, and so Green's amendment may make sense. Part of that initial concept was that the Supreme Court at that time was the only court, and then Congress could set up other courts. And so I have to believe that the Founding Fathers may have thought there maybe needed to be more judges on the Supreme Court if they were going to actually hear cases. Because at one time, they actually heard cases. I don't know if they ever did, but they had the authority to hear. I think they may have heard 2 cases where they were the actual, trier fact. We've changed that system for hundreds of years now, and maybe it is time we say, wait a minute, the reason that flexibility was there was so that Congress could make those decisions, but we've decided to set up district courts and circuit courts, and they no longer need to have more than that. And that's a rational argument. I doubt the amendment will pass, obviously, in the House, but we'll see. But it's worth talking about.
Well, I mean, I just don't understand the Democrats, instead of working on things that might help people with this new majority they have, all we're getting is subpoenas. We're getting investigations on the president. They want his tax returns. We're getting proposals to change the electoral system because they don't like the outcome. Pack the Supreme Court, lower the voting age to 16, because all polls show that 16 to 18-year-olds are quite liberal, so they want to do that. They want to change the way we elect the president to an electoral college. And you're a history major, right? There wouldn't even be a United States without the electoral college, because at least 3 states wouldn't buy into the thing if the president was elected by a popular vote, because they wouldn't have any say, right?
That is absolutely correct. And it might even been as many as 5 states that wouldn't have joined the Union. They were afraid of Virginia and New York. Those were the 2 big states. Virginia had the largest population at the time the Constitution was written, and they were afraid that Virginia would pick all the presidents from here on out, and They didn't want to be a part of the United States of Virginia. They wanted to have some say, and the Electoral College was the way that we solved that. And I will tell you, if you just look at it from a realistic standpoint, I don't think the Union survives more than about 50 years after you get rid of the Electoral College, because all of the small states in the center part of the country are going to say, well, we're out. We have no power. We're out of here. And, you know, I know that you know, it'd be tough to have a civil war per se, but the interests of the two coasts and the center part of the country are so different that the only way to keep us together is to have some input, and the only way to do that is through the Electoral College. That's why it was designed. It wasn't designed to disenfranchise, and it wasn't designed because, you know, you had to carry the votes on horseback. It was designed to guarantee that the small states had influence over the presidential election. You take it away, the small states have no reason to stay.
And then basically the urban centers of America, all the agenda items in each party, any presidential candidate, all the agenda items would be simply based on appealing to urban voters, because that's where the numbers are. I mean, it's simple math. So look, I think the founding fathers figured it out, and as I said earlier, Congressman Griffith, there was a time when Republicans wanted a popular vote rather than electoral college, because there was a time when it favored a Republican candidate nationally. So, you know, this swings back and forth. You can't just change it every time because somebody has a majority in Congress and they think they're better off in the next cycle. Bad idea. We're out of time. I want to thank Congressman Morgan Griffith for being with us, Republican, Southwest Virginia. That's the 9th District of Virginia. Congressman, thanks for being with us.
Glad to be with you. Thank you, sir.